Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Just wanted to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded, and our plans are to create a link to the recording on the Climate Action Lower Merion YouTube channel, and there will be a link on the Climate Action Lower Merion's website. And we're beginning to build up a number of programs like this for the benefit of our Lower Merion residents. I'd like to welcome our two speakers tonight, Meenal Raval and Doug Edwards. Meenal is representing Solarise Southeast PA, and Doug is speaking from the perspective of a solar installer. We also have present today a representative of Solar States, Greg Smith. So we actually have two solar installers here. Welcome, Greg, as well. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Meenal has been one of the most important leaders in Southeast Pennsylvania in the Ready for 100 effort. She hosts a podcast on Fridays that's very informative and lively that I've enjoyed listening to. And she has been one of my personal cheerleaders since I started getting involved in the environmental activism a number of years ago. So I feel that we should all really appreciate everything she's doing, and she's been devoting a lot of her time to educating and supporting residential solar. Educating people who want to look into it. She's an honest broker. The program Solarise is a national program that was originally created by, I believe, the Department of, either the Department of Energy or the Department of Environmental Protection, the EPA, federal. We are exploring whether or not we want to create a Solarise Lower Merion. And I will talk about that at the end of the program. So Nina will speak first, and then Doug will speak second. And Doug, I believe you're the president of, you're muted, but you can nod or speak. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Right, of Exact Solar. So without any further, and both Exact Solar and Solar States are two of the largest and well-known and highly regarded installers in the area. So with that, I'll turn it over to Meenal. Thank you so much again. Look forward to both of your presentations.
I just have one other thing to add. We're going to take questions at the end of the presentation. You can put them in the chat. We are leaving time for that to answer questions, as well as if a question comes up in discussion, please raise your hand using the reactions button at the bottom. If you click on that, you'll see a hand raise. And with that, we'll get going. Thanks, Nina.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Nancy, both of you. I am active with the Sierra Club. They have a group called the Southeastern PA Group, which covers our 5 counties. And they are the Ready for 100 campaign that Nancy mentioned has been a national Sierra Club effort. Thanks to all of those volunteers, about 50% of the population of Southeast PA lives in a community that is committed to 100% renewable energy. So that's what the big team did. I stepped up to support all of those teams on the solar end. So there's little logos for Chester and Montgomery and Bucks. So yeah, those teams came to us and they kept referencing something done by the people in media called Solarise Greater Media. And meanwhile, I had worked with my friend Marion Biddle in our neighborhood of Mount Airy in Northwest Philly. So we had been doing that in our little corner. And so to support the Sierra Club efforts, we started Solarise Southeast PA. And it's mainly myself and Marion Biddle. I speak for Sierra Club, and I'm the mouthpiece at events like this. Marion Biddle is our interface with Pico. She does a lot of data analysis. And if you look at our website and submit something, she's the one that will respond to you. So that's two people. We basically do stuff like this. We talk about energy. We help people look at what their energy is. People just see a bill and they pay. They often don't think about it. So what is the problem we're trying to solve? Here's the big thing. We have a whole lot of, we're dependent on fossil fuels, which is a black funnel here in the middle. And how do we wean ourselves off of that and go towards renewables? Solar is one component, and we hope a huge component. A lot of it is that light gray at the top. If you just go from combustion, meaning burning coal, oil, or gas, to electric, you reduce your fossil fuel consumption by that much. If you use an efficient, the end use efficiency, if you use efficient appliances, you reduce your need for energy. So those are the two smart ways to start with first. And then you can look at how you power yourself with solar, wind, hydro. And we're going to focus on solar because that's the most viable where we live. At the household level, what does that mean? You need to electrify what you use, what energy you use in a house. We're not talking about stop burning candles on Shabbat or something. We're just talking about how you heat your water, how you dry your clothes, how you heat your home, and how you cook and get about. All of these can be electric, so you don't need oil or gas. And that's sort of what each household will do as you replace an appliance. But most of us get a bill from Pico. Most of you would, which has both electric and gas on there. Here's a sample bill. And that's the number you're gonna learn to look at every month, not how many dollars you spend, but that month's kilowatt hours, that's in green. That's the electric. And then the other number is the gas you used. That's what we'll be tracking. Another interesting thing on the same Pico bill, and most people don't look at this, is that bar chart. That kind of tells you which months your electric bill is peaking. For me, my house is all electric. My peak is right now, like January and February. In this example, it looks like it's the summer months that's the peak. That means for air conditioning. The other thing we look for, and what an installer will ask you for, I mean, that line at the bottom, total annual kilowatt hour usage. As you see, your monthly usage fluctuates, but what we're looking for is how much you use in a year. And that in this example, it's 12,000. So again, back to solar, we want to make sure that the solar we put on your roof generates at least what you're using now. So around 12,000 in this example. So whether it's Marion and myself or any installer you go to, they will ask for a utility bill. And the reason they ask is not to steal your data, but is to look for that 12,000 number so they can assess if it makes sense for you to purchase solar. The math on the left is a little bit just to tell you how to convert your usage to, carbon dioxide, because that's how global warming is measured in metric tons of CO2. But that's just geeky stuff. So this is the gas portion of your Pico bill. And in this family, it looks like they mostly use gas for heat, looking at the bar chart here. And again, you look at that bottom number, that gives you an annual usage. So again, months fluctuate, annually is what we're trying to reduce on the gas as you replace your dryer, your cook stove, etc. And if you're not sure where to begin, one way is to call Pico for a home energy assessment. They change light bulbs, but they'll also find that broken window pane in the basement that you may not have noticed. And that's where your heat is leaking out. So that's well worth it. You can contact Pico. I know I've seen these inserts and I throw them out, and I just saved one for this slide deck, but you've all seen them. So what do? We, meaning Marion and myself, we look at your roof. We don't come to your house. We look at it online and we compare it with the current bill. If we've answered all your questions, we connect you with an installer, and they will actually come to your house, climb on the roof, take measurements, and give you a proposal. the contracts you are signed is with the installer. The long-term warranty is with the installer. And what we are advocating for is a turnkey system. So you pay and you get all the permits and stuff done. You don't have to do it. The installer does all that. And you can look at our contact page, and I'll give you a quick peek at it. This is our website, Solar by Southeast PA, and the contact page is basically a form with your name and contact info, and then somewhere there's a place to say, if you can't find your Pico bill, give us your Pico account number and we will get the data from Pico. So that's what this form would take you to. I broadly mentioned this. Let's just see what all of that means. We would look at a satellite image of a house and see that, oh, this roof is facing kind of southwest, ideal for solar. We would put it on that front roof, possibly that porch. We would probably not put it on the north facing back roof. And then we look at another tool, and they're both Google applications, the first two. And again, in this one, the more golden it is, the more viable for solar. The more purple it is, less viable. So my initial intuition was confirmed by this. And then we take a second step and we try to see how many panels we can fit on those roofs. In this case, 26 panels. We can convert that to kilowatt hours, the electricity you use in a year. And that's this math. If anyone wants to get into it, we can. Well, we convert number of panels to a system size, they call them in kW. And then we give you a ballpark estimate, but really we're not the ones doing it. So our numbers, don't hang on to our numbers because we don't do the work, somebody else does. So you want to ask someone like Doug for a price. This is just a way to understand it. And I can come back to this if there are questions. I just don't want to get hung up on math right now. Like any custom system, there are always upfront, additional costs for custom work, whether if you have a steep roof or you want it on the ground rather than on your roof. If you lose power a lot and you wanted a battery storage system, all of those are extra, just like when you redo your kitchen or your bath. Nancy, could you talk? I'll get some water.
Okay, I don't know if anybody can advance her slides, but one of the things important to understand is that when you have an install, every install has a level of customization to it that is important to recognize. What is the electric service that's in your home at the moment? When we put solar on our house, we had just done a big renovation of our house. And so we had already upgraded our electric panels. We had just put on a new roof. And in fact, we'd done a major insulation of our roof system. So it was the perfect time for us to be putting on solar. But these other items on this list will all have to be assessed. And the basis of that will then be used by the installer to come up with a more refined cost proposal.
Right. So I'm back. So the remove and reinstall, a lot of people ask, what if I install solar and then I have to get my roof fixed? So that's a service most companies provide. They'll remove the panels, you get your roof fixed, and then they'll put them back on. Obviously, if you don't have panels today, you're not going to worry about that, but someday you may need to. If you use more and you don't have that much roof space, you may want to get panels that generate more electricity for the same square footage. And so you may want to pay more. That's all, part of your design. How would you pay for the system? Oftentimes personal savings or home equity loan. There are loans offered by many banks, but specifically the Clean Energy Credit Union was formed primarily for solar loans. So that's one place to go to. And whichever installer you go to, they all have their own funding package. for the upcoming year, the current year, there is a 26% federal tax credit. And I think Doug is going to talk more about the net metering, so I'm not going to take up the time. And if your house, your place of worship or where you work has a sunny roof, we could talk about that too. And that's basically our contact info. And I'm gonna, I think, end right there. Yep. And leave some time for Doug.
Great. Thank you, Mino.
I'll stop sharing so you can share yours.
Are there any questions on Mino's conversation there before I start?
I think we'll probably just wait for questions till the end, if that's all right.
That would be
Ready
fine.
to go. Mino,
All
you
right.
can stay, right?
Yep.
So engineers are famous for using acronyms and not explaining what those acronyms are. So please, if I do that, I'll try really hard not to do that, but feel free to call me out and make me stop and cover anything that I'm glossing over. Anytime you do, presentations like this for a wide audience, I'm sure there's many of you that know quite a bit about solar, and also many of you that are, just thinking about exploring it for the first time. So we'll try to keep it middle of the road so that it's good, relevant material for everybody. Can you see my screen okay? Yes? Okay, great. All right. So again, I'm Doug with Exact Solar, and have a lot to cover here today. So we're going to jump in. So I guess just a little good way to start is just touching base with the industry in general here in 2022. Not just with COVID the last couple of years being what they've been. It's also been a pretty dynamic time in the industry. As I'll touch on in a minute, this is the last year that the tax credit's going to be at 26%. It's going to go down to 22% next year and then 0, unless Build Back Better in some form or fashion passes. One of the key components of that legislation would be to increase the tax credit back up potentially to 30%. But again, none of us know exactly, what, if anything, will come out of that. So not a big fan of kind of using the tax credit to drive urgency. You should do solar when it's right for you and your home. But at the same time, it is important to be aware that it is going to change, and you have to have your system done this year to be able to get that. 26 to 22% is not that big of a change, but the 22 to 0, is a much bigger change. Interestingly, the whole idea of the tax credit going away over time was supposed to be, with costs coming down as the industry matures and volume goes up. But the supply chain issues that most industries have had, I'm sure the folks from Solar States here would say the same thing. It's, the cost of materials. We've had even just basic electric components that we would never even fathom to buy ahead of time because they're just always on a shelf, and suddenly they've been not available. And it's been, quite a thing to juggle. But I don't think there's any contractor in any trade out there today that's not dealing with, some of that. But obviously that does, hit costs a little bit because we've got to sometimes, expedite things when we can get them, or pay more, buy them from a secondary supplier that's not our go-to supplier. So it's weird to see the tax credit kind of waning at the same time that the costs that have been going down for years are kind of climbing back up a little bit. Hopefully that settles out and we get back to normal. But just, important things to understand about where we are today in the industry. At the same time, inflation is real. I have a slide on it later on, but almost every utility company in the region raised rates in December, January. PECO raised rates 6% January 1st. So, power costs are not going down. Fortunately, we're seeing some very exciting improvements in solar module efficiency. It's super exciting to see where the industry still thinks it can go. And I have some slides that speak to that. So we'll come back to that when we get to those. But really the first thing we start with is, like I said, it's not the right fit for everybody. And I think it's really important to do a proper, evaluation of your home. It does always start with the roof, generally speaking. What's the age, condition, type of roof, how complex, how many peaks and angles, and sometimes you have quite a large roof, but there's so many peaks and angles that we really can't get a nice size array, anywhere. So that's one of the first things, but like Meenal said, we can assess that with satellite imagery quite quickly, and talk to you about, what your options might be, to deal with that. We really don't like to install on old roofs because nobody's happy when you have to take the panels back off to redo your roof, a few years later. So we try to be pretty conservative with roof assessments that we do before a project. And, most of us in the industry have, roofing partners that we can bring in if you don't have your own roofer, and get your roof properly assessed. But, definitely that's an important one. And then shade's the other big one. And we'll talk about shade and south and north facing roofs in a minute. And then with your utility bill, if we put more solar than your utility bill shows, you're going to get 50 cents on the dollar in value for extra energy that you can't use sometime in the year in your home. So the cost benefit gets, a little diluted when you put more solar than you need to use. But at the same time, many of us are moving to electric heat, or, all electric homes, or adding electric vehicles. So there's a little bit of a judgment call that you have to make when you think about your home and your own plans for your home. I would say most of the time, power consumption, even as appliances get more efficient and we look at efficiency measures, we also just continue to add more and more electric consuming devices to our homes. So the trend does tend to be that, the numbers do go up over the years in terms of consumption. So I think if you can err on the side of a little bit more than you use in a year in your home, that's smart. But, we try to help. We can actually do like load calculations for homeowners. We do it all the time. So we can, model the electric vehicle that you're planning to buy, or any other, if you're going to convert your gas heat to electric heat, we can, model that, and, try to not just guess on how much to install beyond what your historical bill says, but, make sure that there's a good analysis supporting that. All the installers out there, there's a handful of tools that, are pretty standard, but they're great. These tools let you look at several satellite images a year, and I'll show you on the next slide. They have some 3D imagery. We always do site assessments before a project, but it's really cool how much you can get done off that first initial assessment, virtually with the satellite tools. So we can plug in different modules, if the larger modules aren't fitting great, there's smaller modules that could be just as efficient. They're just smaller footprint modules. So we can do this with a homeowner, on the screen together on a Zoom call. And it's a lot of fun. You kind of try a bunch of different things out and look at production estimates and budgets, and look at, when you go to the different dates of the satellite imagery, you see different shade angles, and the 3D analysis does shade simulations as well. So it's pretty amazing with today's software. You can make some pretty intelligent upfront decisions and get it pretty close. So hopefully when we do the site visit, we're just tweaking what we came up with, not radically changing, what we came up with in terms of shade analysis and roof angles and roof dimensions. Here's just an example of the 3D imagery. So it's pretty cool. It uses the 3D satellite imagery to try to guess your roof pitch, and I'm sure Greg, you guys do something similar to this. So the idea is to try to get it more accurate if you can early on in the process and help make a decision, including sometimes looking at the north roof, which is always going to be less attractive cost benefit than the south facing roof. But it depends on how true north it is, and it depends on how shaded it is. Sometimes the south roof has more shade and the north roof doesn't. So while the south roof might be more ideal if the trees were gone, maybe the homeowner doesn't want to remove the trees. So the nice thing is you just run the analysis, you use the data to inform your decision. And we've had plenty of homeowners that at the end of the day accept a little bit less cost benefit for other reasons that might make it make more sense to use slightly north facing part of their roof, including maybe it's just facing away from the street and that's an aesthetic preference. So we take the shade readings, we do the analysis, and we can look at module sections independently. So separate arrays and say what's the cost benefit of this array versus this array versus the ones back here. So I guess the point is, don't assume it will or won't work for you. Connect with an installer and do this exercise, and we'll run the real numbers for you and help you figure out, if it makes sense or not. And here, just, mentioning, so, we'll send an engineer out, it climbs on the roof, takes, measurements, shade readings, and, a lot of times that also involves a discussion with the homeowner about tree trimming or tree removal. I'd say maybe as many as a third or more of folks that reach out to us with interest, mention right up front that they're open to tree trimming or maybe tree removal. Usually they like to try trimming before removal. But it's something that a lot of folks are open to. And we want to try to factor that in because, we can adjust the shade analysis today with what it would be. We actually have in the satellite tools, we can virtually trim a tree. So we can take, we can kind of like overlay our on-site shade readings in the simulation tool. And then we can virtually trim a tree and we can show production with and without the tree trimming. So again, you can just help you make a good decision. That's always our goal. And then I mentioned, plenty of folks want a ground mount system or a carport system because it's just that, the roof has too much shade or it's, other reasons with the roof. But, there's some really cool looking carport options that really look great. So it's come a long way. There's some very modern architectural ones, and then there's very rustic looking ones. So they've really gone architectural with the carport options. So it's not something to totally dismiss if the roof is not a viable option. And then I'll show you some ground mount pictures in a little bit. But this is what it all comes down to. So we're gonna help you look at a life cycle study of making a good financial decision of putting solar on your home. So we can run this for any one of variety of analysis. I've got a homeowner right now that I'm looking at a roof option versus a ground mount option, and they're hemming and hawing over what they feel like suits their needs better. And so, we did 2 models and, took our shade readings of both scenarios and worked up estimates of both. And, when we model this, we're looking at we're including the degradation of solar over time, but we're also looking at the inflation of utilities over time. So, you'll have the cost of power going up that you're no longer buying anymore, but we are factoring in, the real, usually it's 0.5% a year, something on that order of magnitude, depending on the module that you buy, annual degradation that you'll get from the system. The performance-based incentive is the SREC revenues, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And at the end of the day, we're trying to model, what's your total savings versus what's your loan payment, and helping you figure out, do you have a positive net number, which is a good outcome, or a negative? And if it's a negative, let's figure out how to make it a positive. Let's look at other options. Let's look at, you know, how to adjust the system to meet your goals. Again, so the other thing I want to talk about with roofing is we can, not all, but many of the solar financing programs can include roof repair or roof replacement costs. But the roof upgrades don't qualify for the tax credit unless you're actually doing a solar shingle roof, which we'll talk about later as well. Again, I'm sure, you know, any installer you talk to is going to have a short list of roofers that they've had good luck with. And, you know, just because so many of these projects involve roofing. So, you know, really, you don't want to be in a situation where, you know, you're then calling and working with a roofer and then going back and forth between your installer and your roofer. I think there's a lot of benefit from having them work closely together, save you the headache, make sure they're on the same page. And ideally, it's a roofer that's worked with solar before and kind of has some experience of doing that. And it can result in a really, you know, good outcome. I always like to note this just because it is, you know, one of the most important things to think about. It was the first question my wife asked was what about leaking on the roof? So I always remember that and like to bring it up. You know, we do have to make roof penetrations, but we're on a very mature, you know, generation of this product today. You know, most installers are using some variation of this product. It does, you know, it does make a penetration, but it self flashes and self seals as it does. And any installer is going to provide, you know, leak-free guarantee around their penetration. So it's a good thing to be aware of, but it's not anything to be worried about. You know, we do a lot of these systems and don't have, you know, any issue. It would be a big problem for us if this was a regular issue, and it's not. So, you know, just a good thing to understand. Here's a picture of, there's so many variations of ground mounts. I could put up 100 different pictures and they would look all slightly different, but I do like to at least illustrate that there's, you know, there are some ground mounts that can be put more flush mount, and I compare it to more of the traditional, you know, ground array that's pole mounted and you know, this is going to maximize production for you. We don't have to put gaps between the rows. We can get a nice angle. But I've had a lot of folks pass on this for aesthetic reasons, you know, in their property. Not everybody feels the same way about having, you know, a more vertical, you know, visible system in their yard. And so that's where this can be a nice compromise, is you can, you know, lay it flat. There's a little bit more, you know, landscaping you got to do to keep the weeds, you know, off the modules. And some municipalities require some fencing around it, but, you know, it's better than the alternative, which is to say, oh, I don't want that in my yard. So, and my roof's not good, so I'm not going solar. And, you know, we can do these, you know, in, you know, longer, you know, 1 or 2 row arrangements. So, you know, you can run along closer to a border. You could just get a little more creative with this to find a way to work, you know, solar into your property in a little more of a creative way. So there's no right or wrong here. It's just preference and what makes sense for your application. I will say these are by far the more popular option at the end of the day, because you know, we do a lot more of these than we do the ground ballast. You know, solar shingles are becoming, you know, more and more popular. We try to stay pretty agnostic to the different modules and the different, you know, types of solar technology. You know, it's all good. It's all helping move us forward. I'm still, we've been doing these, but I do shy away from them a little bit, just because the cost is a lot more for a power density that's about 60% of the power density of the best modules that are out there. So you're really getting a lot less. You know, we've looked at it countless times, especially in the last year, and Tesla's marketing, we can all thank for bringing a little bit more attention to this. But I I just, we've done it for homeowners that say, I don't care, that's what I want, no problem. Well, this is exactly what we'll do for you then. But we always, compare it to what we can do with traditional modules. And, it's never really very close in terms of the comparison of which makes more, economic sense, which, creates a better environmental impact on energy savings. Curious if the Solar States guys have seen anything different.
Yeah, like I'm not a fan of this. I don't think this technology has come, into its own yet for a couple of reasons. Like with, I do think the solar panels we have now are really good. Your typical solar panel with these shingle concepts. Like if you look at the Tesla one, first of all, you're making the solar panel into a structural element, right? Like second of all, they're way lower efficiency. There's no way for heat clearance to happen either, right? Like that's important to have. Like, normally when we're putting solar panels on a roof, there's like 6 inches underneath it that allows like airflow to happen, and that makes it more efficient. There's also like, you have 10,000 connections between, like, there's just, it's an interesting concept. I'm always open to new technology, but I just don't think that this is at a point where I'd want this on my roof over than a normal solar panel. So
I was trying to be extra polite and nice, but I couldn't.
No, I'm gonna rip into it a little bit. I worked at Solar City 10 years ago, which became Tesla. So
The other thing is the you don't have the panel level electronics on these.
Right.
So I think for Meenal and Nancy with your systems, you can go online to Enphase or Solar Edge and you can look at your production and you can look at what each module did yesterday and today, and you can see the effects of shade at different times of day. But that brings a lot of peace of mind, because this is a big investment and you want to know it's working and you want to know that it's, it's doing what it's supposed to do. And I find that it's amazing how often everybody checks their monitoring, more than I would have probably expected. And it's just an, amazing resource. And you identify warranty issues quickly because you can see a single module, out or underproducing. And in either case, you can initiate a warranty claim right within the monitoring platform, and and then just you take care of it much quicker. So you learn about it quicker, you can address it quicker. With these roof tiles, you can't there's no panel level monitoring, so you're just seeing the array. And I think you're losing a really important component of that visibility. So I bring it up because it comes up a lot more in conversation today than it used to. And I think, listen, as the numbers change and the, systems mature, I think Greg and I probably will both sing a different tune, but based on where it is today, it
might get there eventually. It's just, it's not there right now.
Today.
I don't think. Yeah.
Anyway, so we touched on most of this. So, folks like it for the aesthetics, and that's why it comes up, and because Tesla is a marketing, machine, but we're just not seeing the data really support it at this point. I did, I think I kind of stole the thunder on this slide already. So, the big thing about the tax credit ramp down is it's just going to definitely drive up the cost of doing nothing. The cost of doing nothing. I've had a lot of people say, well, solar prices keep going down, so I'll just wait another couple of years. And I think it's time to finally say, well, they're actually not going down right now, and the tax credit's going away, and power is going up. So for the really first time in a while, that's not necessarily, a conclusion you want to be so sure about. So if there's other reasons to wait, then certainly wait. Don't ever force it if it's not right for your home for any of the reasons we talked about earlier. But if you're just not doing it because you're assuming the economics will get better in a year, that may or may not be the case. I think we're all crossing our fingers that Build Back Better does pass, and I can take this slide out of here and put it in the trash. But for now, it's important to be aware of it. And again, I mentioned right in the Philly Inquirer here, about a 6.6% increase, and every utility in the area did some variation of this in the last few months. So this was a pretty unified thing across the region. So, I think that's the thing that we try to, this is an oversimplified graph that I always cringe a little bit when I show, but it does drive home the point, which is that you're you're going to finance your turnkey solar system, including, you're going to get 25-year warranty on everything, and you should expect that and demand that of your system. And you're going to, essentially take a mortgage out on it. So your payments are fixed. They're not going to inflate the way utility costs will. And I think that's the message that we're always trying to, help people understand. So SRECs. SRECs are the first acronym that I'm going to make sure I stop and properly define. So it's a solar renewable energy credit. Today, it's worth about $40 in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania does have a fluctuating market. So I'll asterisk that it's not, always worth that. It could be, I think a year ago, it was in the, low mid 30s. And for a little while it was at, 42, 43. So there's websites that show you what the current pricing is. But, today it's worth 40, and we'll call that the ballpark value. And what you get is every 1,000 kilowatt hours you produce gets one SREC. Here's a way to translate it. I think if you got $1,000 in energy savings from your PV array, you probably would get maybe $400 in SREC revenue to supplement that. 30, 40, 45%. It depends on your power rates that you're looking at and the value of the SRECs at the time. So, it's not quite half the value of the energy savings. In New Jersey, it's worth $90 in SREC. So our neighbors on the other side of the river, it does end up being much closer to the same value of the energy savings. So solar economics in New Jersey right now are phenomenal. Despite that not being the case here, it doesn't matter what they are in New Jersey, because we're never going to be New Jersey, and we are what we are. And fortunately, the numbers still pencil out with what our SREC market is and what the power costs are here and the cost of installing solar. So it's still a good news story. And there's several good reputable brokers that will do the reporting, monitoring, and all the paperwork needed to get these SRECs for you every year. 1 in 20 homeowners that we put solar on wants to do it themselves, and you're welcome to do it. And you save a few % administrative fee that the broker takes. But overwhelmingly, most folks, just use the brokers because it's not something you want to really remember to do every year and potentially forget and lose your SREC revenue. So, so most of our customers end up getting paired up with a broker that takes care of everything for them. But the important thing to know is that energy savings are not the only way that solar pays you back. SRECs are a meaningful second way, probably worth about 40% of what the power savings are worth in additional savings. All right, net metering. This is a hot one because it gets misunderstood so much, and it's really important. We've had many homeowners come back to us and say, "Oh no, something's wrong. My monitoring system says that I produced, 600, kilowatt hours this month, but my net metering says that what went out to the utility grid was only 150. My meter's broken. I'm not getting credit for all 600 that I generated." And the answer is your home uses it first. Only the net that, above what your home needs goes out. And then when your home needs power more than is what's coming from your array, whether it's at night or a cloudy day or just in the winter, you're going to pull from the grid. And what they're giving you credit for is the net of these two numbers. So you're only paying for the net balance of what you took in from the grid and what you sent to the grid. And they let you, this is the most important thing, they let you do that over a 12-month period. So like most of us use, more power in the summer, more electric in the summer because of air conditioning, which is when your solar array is going to produce, its peak performance for the most part. But like Meenal said, she uses electric heat. So she has a peak in the winter when her solar is not at its peak of production. net metering's a wonderful, program, because it really, boy, this would be complicated if we didn't have that. And we may, who knows how it changes in the future, but it's a really nice, it's a really nice way that the whole industry's adopted, and it makes it nice and simple. So just don't confuse what your monitoring says your solar array did and what the utility bill says went to the grid. That's the most often misunderstood thing. All right. So yeah, just showing a typical project. So I just grabbed one that we did, just recently, where it was a 21 kW system. So a little bit of larger system, larger home. They wanted to finance 100% after the tax credit. And, as you can see here, this is just slightly net positive, meaning in the very early years, their savings are just more than their repayment, but the repayment is fixed over, the life of the system or the life of the loan. And with, utility inflation, the savings are going to go up a little bit each year. So their projected, estimated net savings was around $100,000. So pretty significant long-term, savings. And the most important part is, a similarly sized project, 19, I pulled a different example, but 19 kW, is gonna avoid 7.9 tons of carbon dioxide pollution every year, and it's the equivalent of planting 1,500 trees. So one homeowner's solar system on their home is the carbon equivalent of planting 1,500 trees, which is a pretty exciting and meaningful number. And I think we find that economics are almost always the secondary reason everybody does solar, or most people. They just, it's important that the economics pencil out so that it makes sense to do. But this is the stuff that everybody asks us for and wants to understand. It's pretty amazing how much of an impact each home can make when you think about it that way.
So we are getting to close to 8 o'clock, and there's a number of questions and in the chat I'm seeing. Do you want to try to wrap it up so we can get to the questions?
I would be very happy to. Yeah, I had a feeling.
Well, you need to go through this slide. This is an important slide.
Okay, I'll speed talk. Okay, so the bottom line is, it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months from start to finish. It really depends on how smoothly and quickly the interconnection application goes, the local permit application goes. We've had plenty of instances where it went very smoothly and very quickly, but we've also had instances where, we've had streets where we've done 3 homes on the street that had no problem with interconnection, and then the 4th neighbor decides to do it, and PECO says you can't do it. We're now at a limit of what we want in this area, and you have to pay an upgrade charge. So we just caution everybody that it's important to factor that time in. Obviously, your installer is going to do everything they can to expedite that, but it's good to think that about the process taking that amount of time. And I always remind, a couple months post install, because you have to get your inspection done. You have to get PECO to swap out your meter from the traditional one directional power meter to the net meter that will capture both directions. So they have to, we all know how fast PECO works. So you got to allow a few weeks for that. And then, sometimes it's a month or 2 before your bill actually shows your solar data on it and your net metering. But your installer is going to manage this whole process for you. So it's just good to be aware of the timeline. None of it should be anything that you should stress about or have to really deal with.
One quick point on that. We did hear from PECO that they're back ordered on net meters, unfortunately, due supply chain. So, that's a part of the process that they control. I'm sure they'll get more supply, but that's unfortunately probably going to add a little time to that swap as well.
Yeah, I'm hoping by the time anybody on this call that actually decides they're interested gets through this process, that'll be a long gone issue. But that is one of those issues I was describing at the beginning. It's mind blowing some of the stuff
Yeah.
we're having a hard time getting right now.
I'm not quite sure how
But-
Pico ran out of net meters, but they need to find some
Yeah.
more. So yeah.
And I did want to note, just Lower Marion has a streamlined process. They're Soul Smart bronze, which is great. It just means that's less likely to be, there's other municipalities we deal with that are not. And sometimes the interconnection actually goes very quickly. And in a few weeks, we're approved and good. And then the permit takes 2.5 months because they haven't thought ahead like this as a local jurisdiction to be solar friendly. So this is a kudos to Lower Marion for this. And I talked about the tax credits, so we'll skip that. I don't think we need to geek out on modules. I guess the main point is we're seeing plenty of modules hitting 22% efficiency, which is just, really great improvement over the years. And, these are just some of the leading, there's quite a large number of options out there, but these are typical of what we'd consider to be some of the leading, module brands out there and their efficiencies.
Yeah, just one other point on the modules. I mean, when I started in solar 10 years ago, a solar panel was like 250 watts, right? Like something like that. So, you can get like a cheaper panel at like 350 watts or like those premium ones at like 400. And, it seems like there's not big leaps in technology, but over 10 years, there's small little improvements where we get to a point where, the technology is pretty good now. So.
And I always like to point this out. They've gotten a lot nicer looking. I love the all black modules. They look so sharp. And when you lay them out with a clean install and you do good skirting and scroll guards and make it really, clean around everything, boy, it looks sharp. So it's come a long way. And I'm not going to get into this because we're running short on time. So we'll wrap here. So do you want to pick some questions? Because I see that there were a bunch, and I don't know that I'd be happy to follow up and answer afterwards any that we don't get to today.
Some of them were answered by other people. I'm just looking here. Oh, well, first of all, there was a comment about trees from several people taking trees out, and it's I found it really interesting that an installation is like planting 1,500 trees. So there's certain things you have to balance.
We definitely don't. We do not suggest removing trees, just to be very clear.
Yeah,
but,
and like same thing with us. Like if you're gonna try to take down 5 trees to go solar, why are you doing that? And people made good points. Like if your home is heavily shaded, it is cooler in the summer because of that. Invest that money in energy efficiency maybe instead. So
I think one of the things is, look, everybody's perspective that they come to this is slightly different, and I think we try to really listen to different priorities that homeowners have and try to find the right solution. And it doesn't look the same almost ever from home to home.
Yeah, that's my experience too. Every home's a custom situation essentially.
One person,
Right, and I would just add on the tree assessment, while I'm the one that typed in don't remove the trees, and we happen to have trees shading our roof, which has impaired the value we can get from solar. It gives us an enormous amount of cooling in the summertime. And also the 3 trees that are shading ours are an American elm, an oak, and a river birch, all 3 native trees that have high ecological value. So when you're looking at trees, and if you think you might want to do some assessment, you want to find out not only is it sequestering carbon, but what is its ecological value? Just a consideration if you want to be really, deeply thoughtful about it.
Yeah.
Don't take out an oak.
Yeah.
Do not take out an oak.
It's funny. I'm trying to think of the last project that actually involved the removal of a tree. It comes up in conversation, and it becomes sometimes part of the analysis, like I was showing, but I really can't think of. It's not often.
So there was an interesting question about how far out installations are running, and Greg from Solar States responded that it's 4 months. So that's an indication that for people who want to get their solar installed, and I guess, can you explain not only
Yeah.
how far out it is it 4 months? From when? From when you signed the contract?
So I'll say this, I mean, there's, we've been able to do some as quick as 2 or 3 months. It's never really faster than that, just between procuring materials, getting on the schedule, having the permit approved, getting the utility interconnection approved. Like, it's just not happening faster.
And from a tax credit perspective, is it
Has to be
adequate to
done.
have, is it adequate to just have the project installed, or do you need utility connection to claim the tax credit?
Consult your tax professional.
Okay.
Yeah, so like, yeah, that's the best answer. I mean, if you want to look into the actual language on it, it's IRS form 5695. You can have your accountant take a look at that. And yeah, usually, it's usually if it's the language is actually placed into operation, right? So it's that's a little vague as to what that exactly means. And maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah. I
Now,
think
are you familiar?
oh, go ahead.
Doug, there was a request for Mino if you could take your slides down so we could.
Oh,
see the
yes.
whole
Yes.
group.
I'm so sorry. Yes. There we
No,
go.
that's fine. And if you haven't put a question in the chat and you do have a question, you can also raise your hand. I am monitoring the chat. I will say one other thing about the trees. We installed solar this summer. We live in a very shaded area, and we're able to put panels on the south facing roof without taking out any trees. And it just goes to show you how things have improved, because this was the third time we looked. And we're getting just as much power that way than we were from installers several years ago who were going to put panels on a good part of the majority of the roof, not the entire roof. So there are a lot of different considerations. I think your point about it's custom, and we're very happy. And our hookup with Pico was quick. We just did it this fall, so it's a pretty good estimate, unless you get into supply side issues, in terms of how long it'll take in this region.
There's a question in the chat about condo associations.
Good question.
And the question is, how have you done projects for condo associations, and with both common area electric usage and metering and individual apartments on their own meters? What are the approaches that have been used to make it work on condos?
Yeah, maybe this is something we could each comment on a little bit, because probably seen a good bit of different examples. I mean, so much of it depends on the feelings of the HOA in place. We have them where we've done them for homes in the HOA, and we have others that it's a hard no. And we've had ones in between where they thought they were okay with it, and we presented to help support the case, and they decided not to do it. So there's just a lot of variability there, and it's tough to predict which way they'll go. If the HOA itself does it as a common entity, that's a not-for-profit organization, so they're not going to get the tax credit. But that's still, that makes them like any other, not-for-profit that could do solar. So it still may make sense. They could have a common, building as part of the community that ultimately that power cost gets split. So it's so hard to give a single answer to there. I think it just really varies case by case, but it is possible. And I don't know, Greg, if you want to.
Yeah, it is possible. I think some of the things you need to think about is like, what are your goals? Like, is it that individual tenants want to go solar? Because in my experience, that the main question about that is like, who owns the roof? Is it the actual person, or is it the HOA? So that's the first question. Sometimes condo associations, you can design a system to offset that common meter, right? Like maybe it's people coming together saying like, we want to, maybe you have like common laundry facilities or something, and you want to do an array to address that, that's doable. Doug brings up a good point, like the tax credit availability. That's certainly something to check with a tax professional on, if that would be applicable. That's going to change things. There's one other point on condos and properties with multiple meters. Pico does have, we were talking about net metering, that concept. There's this also concept of virtual net metering, where like, gets a little complex, but you interconnect to one meter, but then you can spread the benefits of that interconnection over to other accounts through this process called virtual net metering that Pico does have. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be applicable in all cases, but something to look at.
That's actually getting toward what I was reaching for, because even if it's just to power the common areas, a project of that size is going to need to be voted on by the entire set of owners and reach approval. And it's my thinking that people are more likely to approve this, whether they've thought about it before or not, if they're going to actually see some financial benefit themselves, like off their own bill or somehow a fee paid back to them or something. So that's why I was asking.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And those financial benefits, we all appreciate the environment here, but we recognize the financial benefits are important for doing this, right? So
it's sad to say that's a lot of what you have to contend with. The market is filled with people who already are sold on the idea.
So the next question that we have, which is an interesting one, is I have an all-electric home and buy my electricity from a third-party supplier that uses only electricity from wind and solar. Why should I go with the solar panels? And I don't know if somebody wants to start with what the argument would be. I have some points, but I think maybe let's have our Meenal, you want to go first?
When you buy from a third party and you think you're buying clean energy, you're basically buying SRECs, or the renewable energy credits that Doug mentioned. That's great, but it doesn't reduce emissions, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that. There's a number of reasons, particularly in a state like Pennsylvania, where anything we can do to get more renewable energy generated in Pennsylvania is very valuable, because the SRECs that you're buying are likely from projects out in the West somewhere. They are not reducing, adverse air quality impacts that we have from power generation in the East here in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has a lot of fracked gas in our mix, so you're helping to get off of that very, very dirty system. And you also have some resiliency in your own home by being by having, especially if you have battery storage. I would agree with Meenal that the SRECs, which is what we talked about earlier in this, that you can sell the credits of the power that you're generating to someone else. Well, when that person buys that SREC, they are then turning around, marking it up and selling it to someone else, who's then claiming that they are the ones that are using the clean energy from your home, not you. And SRECs are carefully tracked so that they, they're very, you can be secure in the fact that you are buying, that it's not being sold twice. But if you are putting solar on your roof in part because you want to save the environment, you're not, and then you sell your SRECs, you've kind of let someone else also claim, like the person who asked the question, that they are using clean energies. And so you've got two people thinking they're using clean energy in the simple case, when really only one unit of energy is being generated.
There's also the economic piece, which is that power you're buying, you know, you're still paying the utility transmission and demand charges on top of it, all of which is subject to inflation for the next 30 years. And if you put your own system in, you know, back on the economic side of it, you know, you're creating cost control, you know, for yourself. So you're not protected from inflation, you know, of power costs if you
That's a good
continue,
point.
you know, buy.
Any other questions?
There's
You can
one-
raise your
there's-
hand. We're almost at time.
There's one we haven't answered at 8:02 by Tom,
Oh,
who asks, how far out are site analysis?
Those are not far out. We're doing those all the time.
Yeah, yeah, we could get a site analysis done. I mean, we'll, you know, like either Dog or, you know, or me can do a pretty decent initial analysis online, right? And then if solar is something you want to do, you know, we can send our site surveyors out to do a more thorough analysis. And then at least with Solar State's process, I'm sure Exact's pretty similar. It's like, then we like do like a finalized sort of design once we have that on-site data too. So
before we lose any more people, Nancy, what we'd like to do is, first of all, thank our speakers. And then second, a group of us are exploring whether or not there's interest in Lower Merion for a group buy, looking for a discount. Experience with the group buys with a discount in our region, which has not been a lot of experience, but it's been time intensive and not fruitful. And so our group is not eager to spend a lot of time and not be able to gather up enough people who all want to buy solar around the same time, enter into a contract with the same contractor, and then get all benefit from a discount that rises as the total kilowatt hours of installations are the more the installations, the more the discount. I guess our question is just to know if people are interested in that, and if they are, to let us know, and we can follow up with you. And Nancy's got some system for, Nancy's gonna.
I was gonna wait. I was actually gonna send the poll out because we've lost quite a few people.
Okay.
So we would get a much better idea. Of
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Meenal and Doug. This was excellent. And Greg, your input was very valuable as well. So thank you for coming.
No worries.
Yeah, it's good having two perspectives. That was
Yeah, absolutely. Any other hot questions before we call it a night?
Lisa had a question there. I just wanted to address that a little bit. Like, you know, it's good to get multiple estimates from solar installers, and you know, a few things on, you know, choosing a solar installer like Solar States or Exact, like we're local owned companies, right? And like, read the reviews of solar companies. So the solar industry is big, right? And a lot of players are getting into it. Some maybe not with the best motivations, right? Like if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. You know, Exact and Solar States, we you know, approach things in a straightforward manner, right? Like, and if you're feeling pressured in a sales experience, like don't go with that company. Like, you know, so.
Can I would like to echo that.
Mhm.
I would like to echo that in that both, first of all, I recommend that you talk to Solar States and get the list of vetted, and not Solar States, Solarize, you know, and get that list of vetted installers, of which the two we're on this call tonight are reputable, trusted installers. And the second, I would just say from our own experience, we've had our solar panels for about a year and a half, and the generation has been slightly better, you know, I guess meaningfully better than what was estimated. And so our feeling is that our installer, which was Solar States, was a real honest broker for us. And I'm sure that that would be the same with Exact Solar. So, you know, work with reputable companies. And Meenal has a comment.
Yeah, So one, I didn't mention this, but one of the things we do at Solarize Southeast PA is people like Lisa, they get multiple proposals and they're somehow confusing. And it could, whether it's from these two companies or 10 others out there. And we can compare them and have a conversation with you.
And I
We
have one other
remain
comment.
unbiased and somewhat technically literate to like wade through them. So you can of course contact Doug or Greg, but or their teams. But I'm just saying that's something Marion and I also do to compare multiple estimates.
Nancy, did you have a comment before?
I was just going to say, if you're looking to your panel upgrade for your, for your electric panel, also think about whether think about whether or not you might be wanting to install an electric car charger at some point down the road as well. And just, think about what your long-term needs will be. If you're going to be going all electric in the long run, make sure when you make that investment that you're thinking about what your long-term needs will be.
That's a good last thought here is the conversation has really evolved from being a solar conversation to being about the efficient electric renewable home and the car charger, the upgraded service, battery backup, solar, time of use rates to make sure you're buying the cheapest power if you can't get 100% offset. These consumption monitoring. Sense is a really cool system for that, and there's others out there. It's just becoming a much higher level, bigger kind of way to think about your home. Geothermal, so that you can be all electric and do it efficiently. It's really, people are not thinking about this as much in silos as they used to, because these things all work together to get a home to be, the home of the future that's going to meet our larger goals.
Joel, did you have a question? I thought I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I think that some of the savings that you showed in some of the graphs take place for large numbers over like 30 years. Well, I'm not going to be in my home or anywhere else for 30 years. Does this pay for me to do this? Is it going to make my house worth a lot more money?
Yeah, I think the answer is we should do the analysis with you unique to your home and help you answer that rather than giving a blanket answer. It does increase the value of your home because it's, there's a cost that is not needed with that home because it's generating its own power. So there's been plenty of studies supporting that, and we can have, a conversation about it. But I'd use the numbers that are unique to your home before even going there,
And I would say you want to know that you're going to be in your home for at least some period of time before you do it. And also, in speaking to a real estate agent about this, and this is just one person's opinion, the real estate agents in this area are not well educated about how to help a prospective buyer value the solar installation. So
I never could get a straight answer on that from anybody.
right. And I think it's important to be if you don't think you're going to stay in your house very long, and that you need to get the money back when you sell your house, you should think about it and make sure that I think in some parts of the country, like California and Florida and other places, it's so well adapted now. So many people have solar, but I think there could be, just be thoughtful about whether or not right here in our little niche, it's quite as far along. I don't know, but I'm just recognizing that's not a certainty.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily put a certain number on that. I'm just reposting this study I had put in the chat earlier. Like this is from University of Berkeley, like from 2015. It like analyzed home prices across multiple states, like with and without solar. They did find a positive correlation there, but I would second that opinion on it. What matters is working with a solar smart real estate agent, like more so than anything. We know some of them, and we're doing our best to educate the real estate industry and vice versa. if you lease solar panels, that can make selling your house harder. Like we don't do that. I don't necessarily think Exact does it either, right? Like we're sort of anti-lease, but like, you know, the real estate agent or the real estate industry, you know, we do need to like cross educate both of our industries more about this question for sure. So.
I would just say one more thing about the reason to put it on your roof, which is Pennsylvania is not a state that encourages through its regulatory processes, solar and other alternative clean, renewable energy, true renewable energy. And so it's not something that the industry is as proactive about in Pennsylvania as they are in other states. And, you know, the price in New Jersey for the SREC is directly related to the fact that New Jersey is a member of RGGI, right? And that they have a higher alternative standards required for the mix of electric generation in their grid, right? So Pennsylvania, you're in a way, even though we don't get the same value, you're encouraging more development, I think, in the long run, having an impact. So that's what I tell myself anyway.
Just one final point on that. It's like Doug made this argument earlier. It's controlling the long-term costs of energy, right? It's locking in like a cost per kilowatt hour, like PECO raise rates. We don't know. Any new buyer of a home is going to have to buy electricity, right? We all have to buy electricity. That's not going to change for them. So they're buying a home with a locked in lower cost of electricity for something that they would have to be spending money on anyway, right? So that's how I would frame it. Have your electric bills, you know, a year's worth of electric bills saying like, hey, prospective homeowner, like here's the actual benefit of this, right? You have to like show it to them.
And I think you're just seeing the adoption rates accelerate in general. So, I mean, I'd have a hard time seeing that in 5 years.
I agree with that.
Acceptance and awareness of this is not going to be just so much further ahead of where it is today because of this fight that we're all fighting today. But I really think it'll gain momentum.
How long do these panels last? You said they're guaranteed for 25 years. Do you have to replace them for 25 years?
So no, the most of the quality brands out there offer 25-year, you know, what they call their triple warranty, you know, which includes, you know, labor coverage. So you can get fantastic. Now, not every, you know, if you go to a non-reputable installer and they use, you know, B or C class product that doesn't have that warranty, that may not be the case. So I think you want to ask smart questions about, you know, the warranty behind, you know, and you want to work with an installer that's been around a long time and has a reputation that they're not going anywhere either. Because ultimately they're going to facilitate your warranty for you, right? They're going to provide that service. They're going to replace the components that have failed and keep you online. So it's you know, there's great warranties, but it's not an automatic. So I think it's something that as a buyer, you want to inquire about and, you know, ask tough questions of anybody that you're working with and make sure that you are satisfied with it.
But like anything else, they have a finite life, maybe probably more than 25 years. But, or what say 20 years from now, the panels come out that have twice the efficiency. Would you want to replace them? Is that something to think about?
Case by case basis based on such a wide range of factors, you know, maybe yes, maybe no, you know, it really depends on, we deal with those conversations when, you know, sometimes folks might have storm damage and need to, you know, repair their system and you have these conversations. Does it make more sense to repair what you have or you know, upgrade? And there's never a predictable answer. It really just depends on each unique circumstance. And I just think you try to help the homeowner make the right decision, you know.
Some a quick comment on that. If it like it's a broad question. It's a good question. I would say like so solar panels do lose a little bit of power each year. It's usually 0.5%. Though a premium solar panel these days can lose less than that, almost like 0.3%, which is like crazy good. So a good panel company offers what's called like a production warranty. And the good ones, it should be 85 to 90% effective after 25 years of operation. Like that's what you should be looking for. So in terms of replacing a panel, like, yeah, like they're definitely going to get better. But my view on it is like, if the system is still producing a good amount of energy, it still has value. You know, it's like the kilowatt hours produced a year is its value. So as long as that number is still good, like you don't necessarily have to replace them. So I'm optimistic, you know, I'm a solar nerd, but I'm hoping that some of these new quality panels can last upwards of 35 years. I'm hoping that. I lived in Northern California for a couple of years. You know, they had solar going on early 90s, stuff like that. So you see old systems out there. They might not look great, but they're still up on the roof working. So like 30 years later. So, you know, the technology today is way better. So I'm expecting it to last even longer.
Thank
So
you.
many of the improvements have been made to the constructability and durability of the components. You know, it's just we're benefiting now from all the years of experience the industry's had. You know, to make things that are easier to install. You know, less failure points. You know, which is why they're able to offer these warranties now. So like REC panels will like you said will guarantee if you have 91% production in year 25. You'll get that, you know, replaced. Like that's the warranty they offer on that module. So it's pretty great warranty. Well, I think we ran over pretty good. Greg and I can
Good
keep
questions
chatting
at the end,
for quite a
though.
while.
Thanks for the questions. They're all
Yeah,
really good.
Don't
Yeah.
encourage us. We'll keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah. So.
Well, thank you again. It was really excellent. I learned a lot, and
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody did. I'm going to go back and talk to my husband about.
And, you know, thanks for the work you guys do to just spread awareness of solar and education. Cause that's, you know, I know Exact Solar, they're an amazing company too. It's like, but that's what their education's first, right? Like, so.
Yep.
Well, I think all of us are working hard in all our different ways. So
Yes.
thank you.
It's all important. Yeah. So I appreciate
And
that.
we appreciate it. And this will be up on our website. And
Great.
I've let the people from our EAC know about it. And I'm going to ask the sustainability manager from the township to watch it and consider whether or not the township might sponsor a similar program. So we'll see.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Great idea.
Really nice chatting with you guys. Have a
Okay.
great evening.
You,
Good evening. Thanks.
bye
Bye.
all.
For organizing. Bye-bye.